Neil deGrasse Tyson needs this to believe in God.
I'm good for it, but I'm evidence-driven.
You need evidence.
More
You're a
than
scientist,
I'm
yeah.
faith-driven.
What kind of good evidence does Neil deGrasse Tyson need to believe in a higher power? But wait, has he already believed in any divine power before? What could possibly change his mind from doubt to belief? Also, what does Neil say about science when it comes to God? This video pulls together 12 different interviews with Neil deGrasse Tyson, all to tackle this one burning question. 51% of scientists believe in a deity or higher power, but Neil deGrasse Tyson isn't one of them. He's part of the 49% who don't, and he's not just being contrary for the fun of it. He's got his own reasons. He stands amongst those who say, "Show us the proof and then we'll talk about God." But here's something to consider. Do scientists actually follow any religion, given their focus on logic? Well, yes they do, but they approach it strategically. Neil deGrasse Tyson captures this perfectly with his perspective. He's been quoted saying,
There's 2/3 of scientists pray to a personal God on the expectation it will intervene in their day's affairs. But I can tell you this, productive scientists do not bring their Bible, their scripture, their holy books into the lab because they do not mix there.
Quite the statement, isn't it? It's like having a pizza in one hand and a salad in the other. You've got to find a way to balance both. This brings us to a nifty little term, compartmentalization. It's the art of keeping personal faith away from the empirical crunch of science. Your beliefs stay in your heart, not in your hypothesis. It's pretty clear he considers himself a productive scientist and doesn't want to mix these two worlds. He also gives us a peek into how many scientists juggle their lab coats and their spiritual hats.
So they draw a line in the sand and they do one in one place, then they worship on the weekend, Saturday or Sunday, whatever is your religious tradition.
What he's getting at is this idea that scientists have their weekdays dedicated to experiments and data crunching. And then, when the weekend hits, it's time to switch gears. They hang up their lab coats and, depending on their faith, head to the synagogue on Saturday or church on Sunday. This way, they manage to keep their electrons and their ethics in two totally different orbits. After hearing this, don't jump to the conclusion that Neil deGrasse Tyson is poking fun at other scientists just because he doesn't share their views. He actually believes that science and religion can coexist. As he puts it,
whatever is your religious tradition, there. So to ask whether they can coexist, the answer is empirically yes.
He's not like those people who, once they have their own belief system, think everyone else is blindfolded or mistaken. And he has something to say about mixing faith with law.
By the way, to be faith-driven is one thing, but to be faith-driven and try to create legislation on that affects other people who don't share your faith,
right,
that's the beginnings of a theocracy.
So, no, he's definitely not on board with that mindset. It's like he's got his own little 2-inch plot in one corner of the world, and he's perfectly content there. But if you're going to step into his territory and try to prove a point, you'd better bring what he calls evidence.
If you have good evidence, I'm good for it, but I'm evidence-driven.
As a scientist, he's not tied to any particular religion. And there's a solid reason for that. If you ever bring up the topic of God around him, be prepared to show some hard evidence because that's what he's all about. But what kind of evidence is he looking for? And why does Tyson demand good evidence before believing in any religion? It all boils down to his objective approach. Having been an astrophysicist for 40 years, it's clear that his worldview is shaped by reason, logic, and facts, even when considering the existence of a higher power, he once explained.
So I sit back as a person who's interested in objective truths, and I say, well, it doesn't look like that's a path towards an objective truth. So let people continue to think and say what they want.
And yes, he's constantly on the lookout for that truth. Neil's big on keeping personal beliefs personal and not painting everyone's canvas with the same brush.
So everybody who tried to make proclamations about the physical universe based on Bible passages got the wrong answer.
Historically, using the Bible to unpack the secrets of the cosmos, from the structure of the universe to why disasters strike, has often led to conclusions that get a polite nope from science later on. Take the geocentric model, which held court until the sun-centered truths of the heliocentric model shined through. Tyson argues that there needs to be some solid evidence or logic behind your ideas. Relying solely on ancient scripts, that's not just an incomplete understanding, but often outright wrong.
I'm not telling you what to think. I'm just telling you in the science class, you're not doing science. This is not science. Keep it out.
He's really not about pushing his beliefs on anyone. He just wants everyone to understand that there's a clear line between religious scriptures and lab beakers. He always emphasizes the integrity of science. According to him, science should be based on things we can observe, test, and verify, not just on what someone believes or what a religious text says.
Which means you should have freedom of thought. I don't care what you think. I just don't. Go think whatever you want. Go ahead. Think that there's one God, 2 gods, 10 gods, or no gods.
Look, as I said, he is not concerned at all. It might seem like being at a buffet where you can fill your plate with whatever catches your eye, whether it's a little bit of everything or just your favorite dish. He himself is not looking for anecdotes or feelings. Nope, he wants the hard stuff, the kind of evidence you can poke with a stick. This includes anything from a new invention to an old discovery, or even just a rough idea that can be physically examined. It looks like he's searching for a blend of undeniable facts and maybe a sprinkle of cosmic consistency. You know, something that aligns the dots between science and the divine. It's like he's waiting for a giant neon sign in the sky, but not just any sign. One that spells out God exists in quantum particles or something equally science-y. But why does he demand evidence? Why doesn't he just believe in a higher power or God like half of the world's population? It's puzzling for many, but Neil deGrasse Tyson has also addressed this question. He says,
You believe in God?
Every description of God that I've heard holds God to be all-powerful, very typical, and all good.
no offense, many people around the world adhere to this same religious belief that attributes 2 major qualities to God: omnipotence, all-powerful, and omnibenevolence, all good. These attributes are central to the understanding of God as the supreme creator and benevolent caretaker of everything visible and invisible on earth. It implies that he is capable of any action and inherently inclined to perform good deeds, providing help and mercy to all people, whether they engage in prayer or not.
And then I look around and I see a tsunami that killed 250,000 people in Indonesia, an earthquake that killed 250,000 people in Haiti, and I see earthquakes and tornadoes and disease, childhood leukemia, and I see all of this and I say, I do not see evidence of both of those being true simultaneously. If there is a God, the God is either not all-powerful or not all good. Can't be both.
Through these observations, Tyson presents a critical argument. If God is both all-powerful and all-good, why do such tragedies occur? Why wouldn't a merciful God intervene to prevent the suffering of innocents, particularly vulnerable children? These questions lead Tyson to 2 possible conclusions. Either there is no God, or if there is a God, he might not embody the qualities traditionally attributed to him. This perspective doesn't aim to undermine the faith of those who believe in God, but rather to highlight the inconsistencies between the expected actions of a benevolent, omnipotent deity and the harsh realities observed in the world. Well, Neil's demand for hard evidence seems fair enough, but what about the afterlife then? Every major religion, be it Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, or Hinduism, talks about an afterlife. According to these beliefs, if people don't believe in God or fail to do good deeds, how are they supposed to enjoy a rewarding afterlife? However, for Neil, even this popular concept needs to come with some solid proof. His skepticism about taking things at face value really kicks in here, challenging this widely held belief. He's like a cosmic detective, always on the hunt for good evidence before signing off on any spiritual claims. He openly wonders,
anybody know that there's a heaven, that they're going somewhere, that there's an afterlife? How could anyone know that?
No,
That boggles my mind.
Well, this is the difference between believing something and using the methods and tools of science to establish what is objectively true. And what is objectively true is something that is true outside of your belief system. That's what science is.
no one has returned from the dead to report on the existence of heaven or hell, reward or punishment. Thus, in his view, accepting the idea of an afterlife without evidence is not justifiable. Tyson does not deny the concept of an afterlife because he wants to challenge religious beliefs, but because his commitment to scientific inquiry and evidence does not allow him to accept the concept without proof. Well, not everything stumps Tyson. At least he believes in death, thank goodness. Imagine if he demanded evidence for that too, but since he does accept death as a given, I wondered what he thinks happens afterwards. And it turns out to be something pretty grounded in philosophy.
Put me in the ground. Let the worms, microbes come in and out of my body, and the energy content of my body that I had assembled over my lifetime, consuming the flora and fauna of this earth. My body then returns to them. And thus is the cycle of life. I know that's going to happen because you can measure where the energy goes.
Pretty stark, right? And if you think that's a bit grim, he doesn't stop there.
There's no evidence that I have any consciousness of anything. And by the way, is that so weird? Did you have consciousness before you were born?
You're probably wondering what kind of evidence would ever satisfy his appetite for proof. But before we unveil that, with all this talk, is Neil deGrasse Tyson an atheist? Many of you might think Neil deGrasse Tyson is an atheist, and it's a fair guess since he doesn't exactly worship at any altars, nor does he send prayers up to a higher power. But hold on to your hats because here's something that might just rock your world.
Well, first, I don't count myself among the ranks of avowed atheists.
Wait, what? Is he serious? Then what on earth does he consider himself?
Clearly, I'm not an atheist. Okay?
What are you?
My favorite Broadway musical of all time is Jesus Christ Superstar, which I saw.
Another curveball. What is he even trying to say here? But hold on, he explains himself further.
I don't call myself an atheist. It's why. You can look up the dictionary definition of atheist, and it kind of applies to me, but what is the definition of atheist in practice? It is what leading atheists do, and it's their conduct, and it's their behavior, and it's what they say, and it's their attitude. Mm-hmm. That is what an atheist is today, because they're the most visible exemplars of that word. And most of their conduct, I either don't agree with or simply don't engage in.
That's Neil for you. He marches to the beat of his own drum and says it like he sees it. If Neil deGrasse Tyson doesn't outright call himself an atheist, then surely there must be some criteria under which he would consider the existence of a supernatural entity.
It is unstable to build a government on a belief system. What you want is objectively verifiable truths around which we can all agree. That's what you build your economic system on, your governance on. Once you have that, then you go forth to your mosques, to your churches, and to your... Go forth and preach and believe whatever you want.
Like anything else in the universe, which can be identified through its presence or physical properties, Neil wants the same kind of criteria applied to the concept of God. It should be verifiable, objective, rational, and empirical, so he may not have ever believed in God before. Every entity, large or small, is governed by the laws of physics, and Neil expects any divine being to comply with these laws as well. He demands solid evidence of God's presence, and only this type of evidence would convince him of God's existence. But if God were to have a physical, testable presence, then what really separates us, mere humans, from our Creator? What's your take on the existence of God? Share your thoughts in the comments below, or not, I guess.